That should be your tagline: high maintenance but low drama.
It's like high speed, low drag.
Exactly what I was thinking of. Yes.
Yes. Nice.
No, she's not high maintenance. I'm totally kidding.
A little high maintenance. We drove.
I feel like CrossFitters in general.
Yeah, we drove all over Texas trying to find a specific kind of ammunition for me to run at nationals because I waited to the last minute to decide that I wanted to run only this ammunition for the entire time. And there's an ammo shortage right now, so yeah, we called like 40 places before we found it.
The fitness movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all at one place, zorfitness.com. Today we have Blayr Drumm on the show, and she's a CrossFit and tactical games athlete, and she just so happens to be coached by Chris Hardenberg. One of the things we wanted was to give her an opportunity to shout out her sponsors, so here's what she had to say.
I am sponsored by Safariland. I run their holster and their ear pro. They also have like some good belt systems and stuff like that for tactical games. I'm sponsored by Driven Nutrition. I take all their protein, their daily vitamin, their blues and greens. I'm trying to think of all the supplements I take. I pretty much take, I don't take a lot of supplements, but the ones that I do take, I take from Driven. Mainly it's just pre-workout, a lot of pre-workout, more pre-workout than I should probably be drinking. And their cinnamon roll protein. And then I'm also sponsored by Hoist. They're like a healthier version of a rehydration drink. They work with the military. They are advertised as being the IV level hydration. And I definitely use that a lot in training, both CrossFit and tactical games.
And just recently, Blayr competed at the National Championships for the tactical games and finished in 5th place. She also just recently qualified for the Fittest Experience, which is going to be coming up here in 2023 in the pro division. Overall, Blayr is just a genuine person and an incredible athlete. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Smokey the Blayr, with Blayr being spelled Blayr. I started off by asking Blayr if she could explain the tactical games to someone who doesn't have experience with it.
So basically the tactical games is a combination of shooting and physical sport. I'm not going to call it CrossFit because there's a lot of things in CrossFit that we don't do at the tactical games. So you'll have in a standard workout or stage, they used to call them battles. I think now they're calling them stages, whatever. You'll have a certain amount of time where you'll be on the firing line shooting and a certain amount of time where you'll be doing physical movement, whether you're running, whether you're, I guess now skiing, biking, rowing. We got introduced to that at nationals. Or you're carrying an odd object. You're going over a wall, 4 foot, 8 foot. We saw both at nationals. Burpees now. So you'll be doing some form of movement half the time, and you will be on the firing line shooting for the rest of the time. That will be pistol and rifle. You always go rifle first. So you'll shoot rifle, shoot pistol, make sure everything is clear and unloaded. You'll have a judge to make sure that you're moving safely and you're not doing anything on the firing line that you shouldn't. And then you will turn around and you will do that over and again. So I was talking to Chris about it, I think maybe yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday. And I told him it was kind of like an EMOM. Like if you're thinking about it, CrossFit, it's like every 2 minutes you're shooting. Like, so it's like an E2 mom or an E4 mom. That's the kind of the way that I look at it. And it always consists of shooting and physical movement.
How many stages are there typically? Like for example, at nationals, how many stages were there?
Nationals was like a kick to the face. So nationals kind of different. We had, oh my gosh, I think I blocked out some of it for my own emotional well-being. The first day there was a run, a shooting only event. So in a typical weekend that's not nationals, you will have a shooting only event. So there was a physical only event, a shooting only event, and a physical and shooting event. the first day. So 3. And then the second day, there were 4 or 5, but 2 of them were half point stages. So it wasn't 100 points. It was 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then one was purely physical, one was purely shooting. So
I kind of like that. Like you have an event that is like not as heavily weighted. It's kind of cool.
So like in a CrossFit competition, it would be like a floater, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
They call them aggregates in tactical games. So like you would go do your shooting aggregate and you would go do your physical aggregate.
Yeah.
We had a really bad rainstorm come through right before our 8-mile run, and it messed up some of the shooting bays. So it flooded them all out. So the next day when we came, they had to like get a dozer and like move dirt around. Everything was underwater. So things kind of changed from what they were supposed to. But so the first day we had 3 events. The second day we had 4 or 5 events. 1, 2, 3. I think it was 4. And then the last day we had 3 events. But in a typical, like not nationals weekend, it would be 4 events per day, 3 full stages and a half stage.
Gotcha.
2 days. So it'd be Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, it's like think of it very CrossFit Games-esque, except like the CrossFit Games is all CrossFit workouts, and this is like, some stuff like that with some shooting, and that's something Blayr and I talked about. I don't know, last year was like you have such an influx right now of like high level CrossFitters or former high level CrossFitters like transferring over into the tactical games field. And like her husband was telling me that like they just smoke people in the physical part, but they can't shoot, right? And so it's you have all these events, but the priority is always shooting. And so it's like you have to be good at that, and then you have to be in good shape to be successful, but you can't be in like amazing shape and like shoot like me and be successful.
Yeah. So it's kind of skewed towards the shooting side of things.
At the end of the day, it's a shooting competition.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing that I had to learn. Because I wanted to like, so I started blasting. I just wanted to like spray bullets and run.
Yeah.
Because I thought that I could make up time if I like my physicality would just kind of carry me over and like kind of flush out some of the shooting. And I learned very quickly that that's not true. But also you can't camp out at the firing line, right? Because if you're just camping out the firing line, then people will physically pass you. So it has to be a good mix for you to do extremely well. You have to have the physical and the shooting, but if you don't make any of your shots and you're just relying solely on your physicality, like you're not going to do great.
Yeah. So do you find it like where if you do it correctly, you have like leftover capacity, so to speak, at like the end of each stage, where it's not like you're like physically spent. It's more like you were like strategic and just like executed well?
I do. Every event that I've ever been to, I've always been doing the physical portion of it and talking to the photographer or the videographer while I'm doing it. I know both of them, and they're
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Networking.
And they're like, Blayr, stop talking to me. Stop talking. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
So I'm moving at like, I guess I would say like a 70 to 80% pace.
Yeah.
Because I need to get back to the firing line and like not be dazed and confused. Like I need to be able to get a sight picture without my scope like looking like this, trying to aim.
Do you feel like the closest parallel to like a sport that most people would know would be like biathlon, where like, yes, the skiing is obviously super important, but like if you miss the targets, you're screwed?
Yeah.
I would say kind of, but Blayr can correct me if I'm wrong. It's like, it's more of if you like did a biathlon with, instead of the ski, making it be like a Spartan race.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Because like, and that's where Blayr can jump in, but from talking to her, and I've had to pull the reins back on her a bunch because she'll like physically feel decently fresh out of some of these competitions, but like she'll be also physically like battered and bruised, because it's like, okay, yeah, we have to do some CrossFit-esque stuff, right? You might have to climb a rope or do a ruck run, or, this at nationals, they have to ski and row and bike. But then you also have to scale a wall and move a sandbag and like all this stuff where it's like, okay, that's stuff we do at like a Spartan race or a Tough Mudder, and then you got to do all that and you got to shoot, right? And so like she came out like muscularly felt like okay considering the amount of work, but she was like, my wrist hurts here, my knee hurts here, my ankle. It's like it's just a lot of pounding over the weekend.
Yeah, it really is. It's very, I came from a CrossFit background, but I also dabbled in strongman a little bit. So like the odd object stuff comes really easy to me. But the jumping over walls and stuff like that, that's just stuff that I'm not super great at. I'm a bigger athlete, like looking at the field. So it definitely takes its toll. Like we ran 8 miles the first day and I got out of bed and I like couldn't walk.
Well, and four of those were with the pack. So
30-pound ruck. And it was not like great terrain. Like we weren't just like running on the road or anything. Like we were in Texas Hill Country, like kind of like Rogue Invitational looked.
Yeah.
It was very rocky. It had just rained. So if you tried to run, you were going to slip. Like the girl that finished first, she came up to me and she goes, how many times did you fall on your face? And I was like, 0. And she was like, I fell on my face 4 times.
Which is amazing because Blayr basically fell on her face at the last CrossFit competition I did with her.
Yeah, but so I guess it is kind of like that. It's very similar to, it's similar in some ways to biathlon, but the movements are just very different.
Yeah, totally. It's like a biathlon, but for CrossFitters and people who are into, actually more tactical stuff, as the name suggests. So, yeah, obviously you do CrossFit as well. You just qualified for TFX, Fitness Experience, Pro Division, correct?
Yes.
Cool. So, obviously there's
flex.
some things that, say that again, Chris?
I said, what a flex.
Yeah. You're allowed to do it because I said it. Yeah. Yeah. So obviously you're doing both sports, right? How, maybe this is a question for Chris. Like, how do you go about navigating that? Is it just like really simple? Like, actually, you were actually making a joke about this the other day because you were like, is competing like 4 times in 3 months too much? Like, what's wrong with that?
That's not a joke.
Yeah. So kind of take us through like what the process looks like, Chris, about like, and Blayr, you can jump into obviously of like what it looks like to like navigate let's call it a competitive season for both CrossFit and tactical games.
You want me to go first, Blayr?
Yeah, you can go first. Because I solely rely on him, because if I didn't listen to him, then I would just be doing like 6 competitions a month.
So, I would say outside of the physicality, one of Blair's greatest strengths is also one of her greatest weaknesses, which is like, I think kind of par for the course with being human. And it's actually, she's a friggin' like fierce competitor. And so she tries to put herself in as many of those environments as possible. Plus she's like really bad at like just saying no. And so I as her coach, I think it's fair to say, and Blayr can correct me if I'm wrong, that this was the first year we kind of nailed the competitive aspect of it, where like great example is we finished the last competitive season, and with each one of my athletes who have competitive aspirations, obviously we take some downtime, and during that downtime, I asked them to reflect on the year. What went well, what didn't go well, what can we do better, what did we learn, and like, okay, well, what's the plan for next year? And again, that's something Blair's really, really good at, is she takes the time to do that. And so she sent me like her list of goals, and I look at it and I go, Blayr, there's 14 competitions on this list. I was like, there's 12 months. I was like, I can't even give you a training cycle during this time.
You go by 3 week training cycle.
Yeah. And to be fair to Blayr, it is a tough balance, right? Because, I'd love for the people listening kind of get into how Blayr got into this, because it's where she came from is probably not where most people think. Blayr did not start in like Little Miss Fitness, and so I'd love to get into that. But she has a tough balance where she got into this world via CrossFit, and like she loves doing CrossFit and then got into tactical games via her husband, but has been really successful at that and has garnered some sponsorships. And so like part of her making money is competing in these tactical games events. And so this was the first year where, and to her credit, she was really receptive to me doing this, where I like sat her down. I was like, okay, you can do this. And I never say to an athlete, you can't do something. I'll strongly recommend, right? And it's all based on your goals. But without being too long-winded, we looked at it and said, okay, we have to compete in, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was like 4 tactical games competitions. Like we got to compete in these 4. I think it was Meridian, Ohio, the team won, and nationals, right, Blayr?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was 4.
So one second, is tactical games essentially like paying you to enter in competitions, or is it someone else who's sponsoring you to basically be at the tactical games event?
So I'm not sponsored. The tactical games doesn't sponsor any athletes.
Okay. That's probably good and fair.
Yeah. It keeps everything like non-biased.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I gained sponsors around like getting into the shooting community, and they like will help sponsor my entry fees, and then like where I'm placed, like there's payouts that come with that and things like that, along with just like making sure that I have like all the gear I need. It's a very expensive, I'm not going to lie to anyone, it's a very expensive sport to get into. I told you I was looking at ammo, and I only wanted to shoot a specific type of ammo, because at nationals, I just wanted to shoot a heavier grain ammunition, meaning that, well, for me, my groups were a lot tighter. So when I was tired, I knew that my groups were going to be tighter than if I shot like a 55 grain, like a lower grain ammo. It was $300. It's on ammo.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be like going up to lift on a platform for people who are speaking CrossFit language. And it's like, do you want to lift in nanos or do you want to lift in lifters? It's like, yeah, you're going to travel around if you forgot your lifters at home, or like, you use them once and they're gone essentially for ammo. Right. but like, it'd be like, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. If that's how you're going to make money, you need to have the right equipment to do your job. So that's cool. So essentially there's people who are like suppliers in maybe the tactical space who are saying like, hey, we'll basically like front your fees, help create exposure for you if you do these events. So you're basically incentivized to like really do the events because you're going to make more money. Is that essentially it?
And do well. I mean, I have a partnership with this company who, if I do well, like then people see their products on me. And well, if she's doing well with those products, like I run a Safariland holster, and I run all Safariland products. They're one of my main sponsors. So like, if people see me doing well, I'm running their holster, then everybody does well. So
everybody hates the term, but like a brand ambassador, like
ambassador.
Yeah, you're representing their brand. Is what I mean. That's what that kind of a coin was supposed to be originally about. So obviously, there's like a lot of buzz around. Like people are like, oh, they think it's like super easy to get a sponsorship. Number one, which I think that was probably several years ago at this point. Like I don't think people think that's the case anymore. To get like an actual legit sponsorship. But like if someone's listening and, for example, say they're like an up and coming, just say they're a CrossFitter, like do you have any like advice or thoughts of them, like when is too soon to get into a sponsorship where it maybe isn't worth it? How should people go about like thinking about that or trying to navigate that?
I'm not the kind of person that like approaches companies. That's just not me.
Yeah.
Like I follow a bunch of companies on my Instagram and stuff like that, and just to see what products are out for my own. But like I always, in my head, which it might be wrong, thought like, okay, if I'm doing all the right things and I'm working hard and that work's paying off, I don't need to go out and speak that into the world to companies. People are going to see that. And people are going to come about that on their own. And then they're going to say, wow, I really like, her, she's doing this and this aligns with our brand. And then like, we can start a conversation. I've always been the kind of person that like, I don't want to like go after companies. That I feel like if you stay in your lane and you work really hard, that those opportunities are going to come to you. Now, I mean, I have approached some companies that have followed me for a long time. Like I have been taking Driven nutrition supplements for forever. And then somehow we got connected. They wanted to get into the tactical game space. Jared Wayne Stevens has been with them for a long time, and he got into the tactical game space. Really, really good dude. And he was a Driven as well. So like Driven started following me. I'd been taking their products for forever. And then started talking and things worked. For me, it's always been like, I've been using their product and a conversation just occurs. Like I've run Safariland holsters since I started with my Glock 34, and I just tagged them on Instagram because I liked their product. It wasn't because I wanted a sponsorship. I would still be running their product if they didn't sponsor me today.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that's how you know it's a good fit too. It's like, if you truly actually believe in that and not just like saying that and like putting that up on socials and whatever, like that makes it really easy, and it makes it you feel like more aligned. It doesn't feel like you're selling to like your audience. Like you can just like be like, hey, this is actually what I do. And it's just like you being open with like what you do and like what you use and like all that stuff. So no, I think that's really good. I mean, I guess the point of me digging into that was, I'm just curious, but then also like, I feel like we're seeing that more and more with like the elites in, again, especially like, for example, tactical games, but like for us, like we're all into CrossFit. Like you see that with like the best, like Ricky basically just came out and was like, I'm not going to Dubai essentially. And it was like, well, number one, it was just sort of the same thing that we were just talking about, where it's like navigating his season. He was just competing a lot. And then he's also going to obviously a foreign country to compete and like all the costs associated with that. But then for the top level CrossFit athletes, it's like balancing that, because they're also like making money when they go do that for a lot of them. So it's like you could win a prize package, you could have great exposure because there's going to be a lot of media at one of those events. And it's the same thing, basically what you're doing here. It's like, this is part of my income. It's not just like a fun hobby for me to do. It's like something that's like, it's more than that, right? Like it's also providing income, and it's something that I have an obligation, so to speak, to do. But then also you're combining that with, I still need to perform at my best. And if I want to perform at my best, which is probably the thing that matters the most, then I still have to take some time to get in good, solid progressions, have an off season, some of that stuff. So Chris, I'll throw it back to you. Like pick it back up kind of again, where you were sort of saying how you're navigating your guys' season, how you kind of do some reflection and kind of plan out your year. And you were saying like, this is the best it's gone sort of this year.
Yeah. And so after we kind of looked at the competition structure, I basically said, okay, what do you have to do tactical games wise? And she was like, all right, well, I have to do these 4 competitions. I was like, okay, perfect. Let's put those in the calendar. They're here, here, and here. Okay. What, based off of this, CrossFit wise, what are your top priorities? And so she's like, all right, well, I want to do the open, I want to do quarterfinals. And then with her athlete progression, we wanted to get her into like one of the major, like I'll call it like off-site in-person competitions. You know, so you're
one of the ones everyone wants to do.
Exactly. So obviously Blayr did Fittest Experience. And so I thought that was a good one. Her and I did that last year on a team of 4 in the RX division. And I said, hey, you know, if you want to do team during the CrossFit season, trying to find a team you could do like quarterfinals with, you know, I would suggest trying to find those people, link up with them and do like a Fittest Experience with them as an example. And so through that, we kind of mapped it out and fell into the idea of like, okay, well, why don't we just split the year in half? You know, for basically 6 months, our priority is tactical games. And for then 6 months, our priority is CrossFit. Now, the demands of each, it's not like for tactical games training, we're shooting all the time and running and we're never doing the other stuff, right? We're basically doing the same training I would do if it was a CrossFit focus, except we're taking, you know, she's got, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's call it 9 sessions in a week. Let's just say, you know, 2 of those might be shooting, or 3 of those might be shooting, and the other 6 are like skill development, strength development, you know, aerobic work, whatever. And then when it's CrossFit season, we take that shooting out.
How often do you mix the two? Like do actually do shooting and stuff to like, If it's nothing more, like to make it super simplistic, like overly simplistic, like get your hurried up and shoot, basically.
So that's hard because it's kind of frowned upon to
Right,
shoot
exactly.
at the gym.
Yeah.
Shooting guns
Or to show up with like a bunch of CrossFit equipment at the range, probably, and like doing burpees next to someone. They're like, "What are you doing?"
So I can kind of answer this. So
yeah, go for it.
I have like targets that move around. I have a metal stand, and I basically put my sticks in, put my IPSIG target up. It's like a brown silhouette target, and I can use that in the gym. It doesn't freak too many people out. I don't actually shoot in my gym, but I can dry fire, right? So that's like the best way to get good at shooting without using ammunition. So sometimes he'll give me like active recovery work, or he'll give me like some type of EMOM. Like whenever Ohio was getting close, I kind of did this more. But when I was like warming up, I would like warm up on the bike, and then like every 2 minutes I would get off the bike, and I would have my belt on and everything, and I would have my plate carrier on, and I would just get off the bike and pull out my pistol. I didn't bring my AR because I figured that would really freak people out. I would pull my pistol and I would just dry fire a few times, and then I would get back on the bike, slowly pedal, and then dry fire.
Things you could do in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that you cannot do in Roseland, New Jersey, where I'm sitting right now. I think if I pulled out a pistol, it would be a problem in here. But yeah.
Well, I coach at the gym. I live here. I don't literally live at the gym. Like my kitchen, I own a meal prep company, and my kitchen is behind this wall. So I work here, I work out here, I pretty much live here. So I know everyone, and I just come during like off hours. So like we don't have any class between 9:30 and noon. So that's when I work out. And if anybody comes in, I think I was more nervous about it than anyone else, because I would be like, hey, I'm clear. I just want to show you, like, I'm clear. I don't actually have, like, I'm not loaded. And they would be like, okay, it's fine. Like, we didn't even, I'm like, okay, well, so I did do a little bit of that. But I typically don't, join the two together. I have a bike erg, and I could easily bring it to the range. I actually was thinking about doing that. One of the main things that I want to work on going into next year's tactical game season is shooting with confidence, long range, under pressure, and like tired, because the further the distance the target is away from you, the more, like, I have a 1 to 10 reticle. So when I like zoom in on that target, like I see all these more than, if I was zoomed way out and close. So I want to get better at shooting at distance under pressure and really fatigued. So I might bring my bike erg out. I just bought a ski erg yesterday on a stand, but it won't fit in the back of my Jeep. I tried yesterday. I forgot to tell you that, Chris. I bought a ski erg.
I saw it on Instagram. I saw you got a ski erg.
It was $475. I was
I was all about it.
Where the heck did you get that for? Not cheap.
Yeah, a gym was shutting down, and they just had a ski erg on a stand for $475. So I bought
it. Ben just opened his gym, Ben, like a month or two ago, and it's like, gosh darn it, if I could have got ski ergs for $400.
Would have jumped on that.
Right? A lot of people think that to train for the tactical games that you have to join the two together. Like, oh, I need to go to my range with an axle bar and farmer's carry handles, and I need to simulate some of these workouts. If you're a really proficient shooter, I would say, like, sure, like, get your heart rate up. But I mean, you could do that just running around, and then try to shoot. I think that's kind of what I'm going to do next year, is like maybe try to get my heart rate up and try to shoot. But this entire year, I was at the range at about 10 yards, shooting at a target, static, that was about this big around. And it was very boring. I mean, I liked it, but a lot of people would probably think it's very boring, and they would probably think, why are you training for tactical games like this? Like, this isn't going to help you in tactical games. You're never going to do this in tactical games. Well, you do. And at nationals, it really benefited me, because I shot probably the best pistol I've ever shot since I started shooting. And it's because I could get to the firing line and I could remember my sight picture every time, because I stared at that sight picture at the range every Thursday. at 10 yards, shooting very slow, and at like one of those pink like things that you reinforce your like a hole reinforcement. So
think of it as like, for a CrossFit reference, like the boring grunt work of like, all right, I'm on the rower and the ski erg and the bike for an hour, operating at 70% pace. Like, chances, unless you're making it to the CrossFit games, the chances of you doing a workout that long is like so incredibly slim.
Zero.
It's literally zero, right? But you have to do it to build the aerobic capacity to handle the beatdown of the sport.
I was going to say, like, why are you doing snatch balances and pause squats? Like, you're not doing this in a Metcon.
Right, but the difference is that stuff can still be fun. Like, let's face it, no one really
it's
likes.
not fun for me.
But no one really likes, like, I've had the fortunate happenstance to work out around people who've been to the CrossFit Games or high level semifinals, and it's like they don't like doing that stuff either. Nobody likes doing it, right?
Yeah,
but
they like winning.
Right, exactly. And so, like, for Blayr, that's like the boring stuff when it comes to shooting. Is like, okay, how fast can I pull my gun out of my holster? Can I find my sight line? Can I, and this is coming from a guy who knows next to nothing about shooting, but I've learned so much just working with Blayr, that it's like, she said after the competition, like, it was so easy to find that stuff because of all the time she put in doing that.
So, Blayr, do you feel like you ever need like a shooting coach?
I mean, I would say that if I had a shooting coach, I would have probably progressed a lot. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but like my progression might have been faster. I started shooting in 2019. I'm not going to say I couldn't hit the broad side of a barn, but like I probably couldn't hit the narrow side. My husband was my shooting coach, which also 10 out of 10 would not recommend.
Shout out Nathan, though. Shout out Nathan.
The patience.
Ben, big Nacho Libre guy. Just going to throw that out there.
So yeah, I had 3 months. So I went to watch him compete. He was like, yeah, he was burnt out of CrossFit. He didn't want to, did not want to do CrossFit anymore. He was kind of competitive. He'd do local competitions. And he was like, I just really don't like this. This really isn't fun for me. Like he's a Marine. So he was like, I really miss shooting. I really miss that environment. Like if I could find something where I can do fitness and also incorporate shooting, like that's what I want to do. So he literally Googled that and the tactical games came up. So I think we attended their like third or fourth event ever. And that was in 2019 and it was in Texas. So we show up and there's like 12 people. There was like, I mean, we remember everyone who was there. There was that few people there. And, he really liked it. He did not do as well as he thought he was going to do. He went through thinking that like, oh, my shooting's going to pull me through. And he didn't do as well as he wanted to do. So he signed up for another event in Atlanta and I went again and I was like, okay, I'm really tired of like just watching these. I want to do this.
It's like watching like your spouse do like a 10K. You're like, why don't I just run this alongside you?
Yeah, right. So I was like, I really want to do this too, but I don't know what I'm doing like at all. I had shot his ARs before. Like, I think our first or second date was like, he took me to the shooting range and was like, here's my LWRC rifle. Like, I'm really cool. You want to shoot it? And like, so I
that's what did it for you.
That's literally what I'm envisioning. It's like Nathan's pickup line is like, hey, check out my gun.
Oh my God.
Look how cool I am.
But yeah, so I had shot a rifle before. I hunted a lot when I was like in college and stuff. So I knew how to like safely operate a weapon, but I didn't know how to like shoot a pistol for like marksmanship. My dad would like take me into the woods and be like, hey, want to shoot my 22 pistol? And then like we'd shoot at things in the woods and then we would just go. Like I didn't know if I hit anything or not, right? So people are gonna have like such a skewed idea of what a Louisiana when they get done listening to this. But anyway,
we eat gators and shoot guns. That's what we do.
So anyway, so I decided to compete, and I had 3 months, I think, to get ready. And I was like, all right, Nathan, like I need you to teach me how to shoot in 3 months. So he was like, all right. So went to the range, and it got like pretty aggravating for both of us, because I thought I was aiming at the target and I wasn't even on paper. And we had a lot of high-pitched conversations on the range. I'm not going to call it yelling. But I'm sure everyone else that was at the range was probably like wondering what we were doing. But it got to the point to where I was shooting at like 5 yards. Like 5 yards is like, you're right in front of the target. Like if you miss it, then the gun's not even pointing at it, you know? So I basically started there. Like I could not hit the target at 8 yards. I was off paper because I think I was so nervous that I was just flinching so hard. Just at the thought of like, I was basically, there was an explosion in my hand, and I was just jerking, and I was off paper. I got a little better before the competition, but not much better. So I showed up in Florida in 2019 thinking, okay, I'm going to shoot like, okay, but I am like physically ready. Like I'm one of the top girls here physically. So I'm just gonna do whatever. And then I'm just gonna haul it. So that's kind of like how I started. So when people tell me like, oh, they can't try the tactical games because they don't know what they're doing yet, or they don't know how to shoot, or like they're not good at shooting. Like I was not good. I was the opposite of good at shooting when I started, like really bad. Like I wish I had some of those targets now just to see.
That's a clean sheet of paper, it sounds like.
Yeah, like they could have reused it. They probably did. Like, oh, we can just reuse this.
Make the guy's job real easy at the range.
Yeah. No impact, no idea.
So what did you do? Like, let's take a step back before that. Like, what does your athletic career look like up to that point?
I think I started CrossFit in 2015. I did not do anything before 2015.
When you say nothing,
I probably
truly nothing. Like you were like a couch potato laying around. Like what's nothing?
I probably did more to hinder my physical performance than to better it.
Gotcha.
So my husband likes to call it the all red diet that I was on for 2015, and it was Budweiser, Marlboro Reds, and Chick-fil-A.
All right.
My diet was terrible, and I didn't understand why I was sick all the time, but like now I absolutely know. I on the weekends, like I just wanted to party on the weekends, like didn't care about my diet. I thought working out was just like probably the stupidest thing that you could do. My husband did CrossFit, and I was like, why do you do that? He was like, what do you mean? I was like, why would you pay that much money to somebody and just be miserable?
Sometimes I still wonder that.
Yeah, right.
Ben runs a gym now, and he's like, I can't believe people do this.
These people are crazy.
What a bunch of idiots. Shout out Ben's members, though.
Yeah. Oh man. But so yeah, obviously like something changed. Like what gave?
Yeah. So around 2015, me and my husband were still dating. And he was like, look, like you're going down this crazy road, and I'm 10 years older than you, and I was a Marine, and I've already gone down this road, and I don't want to keep going down it. So like, we need to like change focus here. Like we need to start like making some healthy habits. And like, I kind of saw it because like I was fixing to get out of college. I was fixing to graduate, and I was like, okay, like now what? I was at a shift in my life where I'm like, okay, I need to do something. Like I need to get a job. I need to start thinking about like my health, like my wellness. And I kind of like didn't feel like, I just felt bad all the time. I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to just feel bad all the time, because there were spurts where I'd be like, oh, I think I'm going to go for like a run. I ran a little bit in college, just like around the lakes at LSU, just nothing crazy. And when I would run or when I would go work out, I would feel better, and I would want to eat better because I felt better. So it was like, hey, just come to my CrossFit gym. Like, I know you hate it. I'd come there to cheer him on for the open. And I sat on this like nasty CrossFit couch, and I was like this, and I just like watched him do like all this weird stuff. And he was like, just come one more time. Like, just come and like be here and support me. We're doing this like competition for our owner. It's like an in-house competition. I was like, sure. So I showed up and this girl walked up to me. She's actually been to the games now. Her name's Carrie Lee. And she went to the games masters like 2 years ago or something. And she was like, hey, we need a partner. Can your wife like jump in? Because I always had like a more athletic build, I guess. Because people used to like ask me if I worked out, and I'd be like, no. So she's like,
you sort of had like, you're in your own mind, you probably had like this undertone of like, sometimes when I eat better and I like go for a run or something, I usually feel better afterwards. And then also I have this sort of athletic body, but it's just like you were kind of, you know, I don't want to say abusing it, but maybe that's the most accurate way to say it.
Yeah. And I really didn't know anything about nutrition. Like my parents never really like preached nutrition to me, or like, I remember my mom was like always on Weight Watchers. And so like, I heard like her talking about points, but like my dad was just like, he has a great metabolism. Like he's never had a weight problem. He's 6'3". And he just ate whatever, like his whole life. Like I watched him grow up, and like we had a junk drawer at our house, like a literal drawer dedicated to like anything you could think of that was just junk food. So I grew up like, I guess, eating whatever I wanted, but I had his metabolism and I was blessed with that. So it didn't really like start to catch up with me until I was like in my like early 20s, mid 20s.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like I feel bad. Like I feel like I'm gaining weight. Like I don't feel like healthful anymore. So yeah, so I tried, I long story short, I did their little CrossFit competition. I have no clue what I was doing. They tried to teach me how to do a clean, and I was like, I do not know what any of this stuff is. And I ended up just doing like deadlifts instead or whatever, but like they hooked me up to that green band and made me do like 1,000,000 pull-ups. And it was like the worst thing I've ever done.
Why is the band always green?
That's the thickest one they make. Everyone's got that green band up in their gym.
So anyway, yeah. And I was like, I really like this. Like I'm competing in like, I mean, I didn't know if we beat anyone, but I felt like we beat everyone. Like you're just like out there, and it was like just this adrenaline rush of like, I mean, all these people are depending on you. Like you have teammates, like you have to go. And I was like, okay, I think I like might want to do this. So I signed up for their like on-ramp class for New Year's. I was like, okay, New Year's, like new year, new me, whatever. So I like started it, and I just fell in love with it. Like I showed up to on-ramp. I was going to Snap Fitness before on-ramp even started, like trying to learn how to like do double unders, trying to learn how to snatch, like trying to learn like, so I would be like prepared when I got to on-ramp. And then I got to on-ramp and I was like, okay, like how long, when's the open? Like, when can I compete? And the guy that owned the gym was like, you just started, you might need to learn how to do those movements first. So I was like, well, I've been watching YouTube and like, I know how to like kind of do them all. So like, I just need to know when I can compete.
I heard of this guy, Rick Froning. I think I want to be like him.
That was me. So like already, like that was my like first coach. So already he was like, she's a psycho. But yeah, so I made it through that, and I started CrossFit, and I literally never looked back. And I started CrossFit thinking, because I started in a really good gym, and I started at Red Stick CrossFit in Baton Rouge, and they had a lot of people from Brute there, and it was a very highly competitive gym. They sent a team to regionals every year, and I like just wanted to be like that regionals team. Like those girls were so strong, they were so fast, and like I was trying to figure out ways that I could catch up to them, because I knew it was going to take time to like get all these skills down. So I was like, okay, well, I need to focus on what I can control, and what I can control is my diet and my sleep and my protein intake and all my supplement intake, right? So like I need to make sure all that's on point. So I was like, hey, I'm trying to make up. I went in with the mindset of I'm trying to make up for lost time, because these girls have had more time in this than me, and like I need to make up time. So I like started learning about nutrition, figuring out how can I dial my nutrition in? Like how much sleep do I need a night? What kind of recovery should I be doing? Like how can I jump like ahead slowly, by like focusing on what I can control. So I got really into nutrition. And I did like their little nutrition challenge thing. It was like when Christmas Abbott had her nutrition thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that was like my first thing to ever learn about nutrition was that. And then after I did that, I just like deep dove into it. Like what are macros? Like I can weigh and measure everything. Like I got like really into it. And then I went back to school and changed my major to dietetics. And now I'm going to school to be a dietitian.
Yeah.
So,
What point in all that did you, I mean, I'm assuming you quit smoking. What point was that?
I would say like maybe I would say my on-ramp. I remember I was like, I really can't do these CrossFit workouts and like do this at the same time. Like it's not working well. So I just quit, like just cold turkey quit. I have a very addictive personality.
I was going to say,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I was just about to say, if you haven't noticed, like Blayr is definitely an all or nothing person. Like I'm either all in or I'm all out. Yeah.
Yeah. So was it just like I'm reallocating all my energy to this other thing and it's like this doesn't really fit anymore? Or like what was the conversation like in your head that was like I can just do this cold turkey?
It was like I need to reallocate everything because if I don't, then I'm never going to be at the level that I see at this gym because like they're not doing this. Like they're devoting every hour to this, or at least in my head they were. I mean, they had jobs and all this other stuff, but like so it was like if I can't like have this other like side piece over here, if I'm trying to like chase this 100%. So it was, like my husband still laughs because I would make fun of him for being paleo. And I just like was relentlessly made fun of him for being paleo. Cause I was eating Popeyes like every day. And he said, it was like a week went by and then you walked in the house one day and you were like, why are you eating that? That's not paleo. I'm paleo now. And he was like, what? So yeah, like I just, it was a no brainer to give it up because I knew that I wanted like what was over here.
Yeah.
Much more.
Yeah. And I'm guessing also like you kind of alluded to like when you have other people who are competing at a high level, you can see like what their sort of habits and routines look like. And I was like, well, if I want to be like this, my life should probably look at least something like theirs does. And it's like, well, this isn't going to fit in with what they do. Like I see how they operate. Like, I think oftentimes people who are at like a recreational level and they start doing something and they maybe go to a new gym or they like travel around somewhere, they see someone doing something that's like who's like a professional at like what they do. And they're like, oh, like that's what this is. But like, I feel like that was probably a helpful experience to you to have that sort of exposure early on.
Oh, it really was. It really, really was. Like it was like monsters everywhere. Like that's, I mean, to me, right? Because and then like you walk in and there's all these girls and they're like back squatting like 300 pounds. And like I'm back squatting like 125. So at that point. So like, yeah, it was really cool. And it gave me something to chase. And I do better when I have that. So yeah. What I
really love about Blair's background story and why I'm glad we got to it is twofold, right? You know, I'm going to assume, you know, like Ben owns a gym, right? So I'm going to assume a bunch of his members are going to listen. I'm going to assume like a bunch of the members of your gym, Blayr, are going to listen, right? And so from a member's perspective, it's like, you know, you have someone who's competes at a relatively high level in essentially two sports, right? So for the tactical game, she finished 5th in the country. You know, there's really, you can't finish much higher. There's 4 people above you. So that's really high, right? And right, exactly. Like that's it. And then from a CrossFit perspective, competing at, you know, local competitions, you know, national level competitions, quarterfinals, right? But like she started just like everybody else. And that's something like I like when the games, you'll see some like former regionals or games level athletes post like their first like snatch or whatever. And I love that stuff because people forget that like a lot of these people started somewhere like that. And then from a gym perspective, I feel like a lot of people, maybe not as much, but I know some people get enamored with like wanting like CrossFit athletes at their gym or whatever the case is. And it's like, man, most of us get into a gym for a reason like Blayr, where it's like, I just need to get healthy. Like, I just need to exercise and be healthy. For some folks, it's like lose some weight or tone it up. But it's like this CrossFit thing, I don't know what this is, but it looks kind of fun. I'll give this a try. And it's like, as people who are in the industry, we can't forget that, like, that's where a lot of those people start. And then who knows what could happen from there? Like, they might lose the weight, they might feel good, and they're just good with that, or they end up being competitors, but they started at step one. So it's why, I think Blair's story kind of speaks to a lot of people, because it's not like she came into this as a Division I athlete previously, right?
No.
Do you think you would have stayed on the path you are now if, like, you didn't take things as seriously at the beginning?
Like, do you think that I would be here now if I didn't take things as seriously in the beginning?
Yeah, like, for example, like, do you think, like, for some people they would say, like, oh, if you jump in with 2 feet and like you hit the ground running, and it's like you might burn out quickly, or you don't have a great maybe mindset around having a health perspective for fitness because you've gotten into the competitive side right away. Maybe I'm just projecting myself onto you, because it's like, for me, I don't think I've ever would have got into CrossFit if I was doing it for health.
Yeah. I mean, when I started, I was lucky that I had a good coach who was like, hey, you've only been doing this for like 5 minutes. And I mean, he was the owner of the gym, and I guess he wasn't like my coach, but he was the owner of the gym. He was always there, and he coached like 75% of the classes. He coached all the classes I went to.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, he's probably like the best coach in the state of Louisiana. Like, he's very knowledgeable. And he was like, hey, you've been doing this for like 5 minutes. You've been doing CrossFit for like a month. Like, you need to chill. Like,
Yeah.
you can, like, you need to do the class workout. And then he would be like, and then you can do this. Like, I guess he knew, like, hey, I need to allocate to this girl what she can do, or she's going to be like a spiraling tornado out of control.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, no, that's good advice, because you see a lot of people, and it's hard to know too as a coach, like, when you see somebody and they got like a ton of drive, like, do you want to hold them back a little bit, because that if you just completely let them go, they're gonna like tear themselves up just by like doing everything? Or like, do you want to like loosen the reins a little bit and like let them have a little bit of fun and like have a little taste of everything? It's tough. I mean, ultimately, it worked out for you. I think it was probably the right call. But
I'm glad I jumped in with 2 feet. I don't think that I ever would have gotten into like Orange Theory, where it's like, okay, it's similar to CrossFit, but like, there's no Orange Theory competitions out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I think that I'm glad that CrossFit had the like competition aspect, and I was able to jump in with 2 feet, because it was just enough for like my competitive spirit to like have something to like keep me going.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that are like in CrossFit, like the health aspect of it, don't realize that there's a lot of people like you and like me, and maybe also a little bit like Chris. Like, if you came into it with like an athlete's mindset, like, you probably wouldn't have came into it with a health mindset. Like, you can adopt that over time as you like learn to appreciate like more aspects of like what your physicality can bring. But like, for a lot of people who are like really type A, really driven people who are like you, like 2 feet in sort of person, it's like, it's really hard to like be halfway into something like that. So I think it can reverse engineer its way to health eventually. But I think for a lot of people, it's like, it's really challenging to, I don't know, have like a really well-rounded, like, I don't know, philosophical mindset about fitness at the beginning. It's like, I just want to do the thing.
Yeah. And like, that's the thing. It's like, and there's so many like levels of CrossFit. Like, you can always keep getting better. And I really like that. Like, there's always something that you can keep getting better at.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's not like that with other things, but I just feel like it's more so with CrossFit, because there's so many different things that we have to be good at, that you're never going to be the best at all of those.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing that keeps me going. And I was like talking to Chris kind of about like, hey, what's next year going to look like? Do I want to put more chips into the tactical games? Do I want to keep it half and half? Do I want to, do this or that? And I was like, well, and I said this like exactly. I was like, well, I don't want to be a quitter. Like, I want to keep going. I want to do what I can do in CrossFit. And like, that's kind of the mindset I have, is like, I have this goal and there's no like there's no ceiling to the goal, right? It's like, you can always keep getting better, like always keep getting better in both. I mean, in tactical games and in CrossFit. So I think that that's what keeps me going, is like, there's not a level where the game's over.
Yeah,
you know.
totally. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Where did Chris come into the picture?
So I was, I think it was like my 4th tactical games event. I'm friends with a girl named Elle, and she does tactical games with me. And I noticed that she was like hitting all these PRs, and I was like talking to my husband. I was like, man, she's getting like really strong, and she's always at the gym, and she's always working out. And she kept on tagging like Forge Through Faith and everything. And so I clicked on it one day and I hit her up and I was like, hey, are you like being coached? Because you're getting really strong. She was like, yeah. This guy coaches me. And like, it's really working out well. And I'm hitting all these PRs and everything. And I was like, well, I want to play.
I want PRs.
So I just called him, and then we got on a phone call, and he listened to me talk about myself for an hour, and then we started working together.
The best sales pitch.
Yeah. It was
That's awesome.
I think it was really just me talking. I think it was more of like a what do you call it? Like a therapy session. I was like, here's all the things that's happening. Can you handle me?
You're like, he's still here after the hour, so I guess this is gonna work. Cool. So basically you met him. I mean, did you know Elle? Have you like met her in person, or were you chatting, or was that just something where like you kind of follow each other online?
Yeah. We're really close friends with Elle and her fiance John. They kind of were in the tactical game scene right when we were.
Yeah.
Brand new. So we had been to competitions together that we had both been at, and we kind of talked. And then I knew that she was really into CrossFit. I had like seen some stuff that she was trying to, like, she had similar goals to me.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing her videos and like tagging Chris. So that's when I hit him up, because I had just moved gyms. And I was at a brand new gym, and it was not like the gym that I'm at right now. I guess I would call it like a recreational gym.
Yeah.
There's not really any like high level athletes here. They kind of come and go. Like, we have some gyms around us where they'll stop in. And I needed something to like keep me on track. Like, we do proven programming, but before we did comp train, and like, it was okay, but I felt like it really didn't work to like my needs. And before my other gym, I had a coach. He was the owner of the gym. He wasn't my coach, but he programmed for competitors and was kind of like, hey, you need to work on this. You need to work on this. You need to work on this.
Yeah. It's easier to be a little bit less structured at a really competitive gym, because there's so many other people just like doing stuff. And it's like the intensity's high enough and you're new, everything just gets better. But then when you switch environments and it's more recreational, it's like the wind kind of gets taken out of the sails and you're like, I need some more direction here. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah. So I needed that direction. And that's what I need to find a coach. And it just kind of fell into place like perfectly. Like right around the time I was looking or thinking about getting a coach, like I saw Elle's stuff. So
yeah, makes sense. The timing was right. And you just saw someone else having success. So, it sounds like this was after you had already started getting into tactical games. So in kind of the onboarding stage, Chris, like, this was probably one of the, maybe possibly the first, maybe besides Elle, that you had just tactical games. Like, was that something that like you specifically like thought about, or you just kind of look at like your CrossFit metrics and like training for CrossFit basically?
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, it was basically all CrossFit.
Yeah. Because it's tough. I mean, for your own sake, like it's a completely new sport. Like you don't know anything about
but
it.
To be fair, that's kind of what she came to me for. She was at that point in time, it was very much like, I like CrossFit. I like to do CrossFit. I want to be better at CrossFit. I want to hit PRs in CrossFit. And by
the way, I do this thing every couple weekends.
Exactly. So when she came into it, it wasn't like she had all these sponsorships when we started. You know what I mean? So it's like her physicality carried her in competitions to a certain point that got her recognized. And then it was like, okay, well, I have these sponsors now, and I'm getting recognized, and I have a little bit of
lean into it.
I have a following in this sport, and I need to take this a little bit more seriously so I can earn a little bit more income and that get a little bit more recognition. So I was like, all right, well, let's take the time on the shooting side. And from a coaching perspective, that's kind of a lot of what I do. I joke with people at the end of the day, I don't really care what your goals are, because you're hiring me to help you get to whatever goal that is. And so, she mentioned like the quitting aspect. I just said to her, I was like, listen, if we want to lean into this tactical game thing more, I'm good with that. Like, let's do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just trying to get better at CrossFit, because when we started, unfortunately, she was just coming off of like a pretty bad back injury. And she was just getting crushed. Like we met and we talked, and it was very much like she's like, oh, I did this competition, and then I did this strongman competition, and then I did this, and then my back went. And then it was like, well, this might be why. Like, so it was a lot of like, okay, hey, listen, we're going to get back on track, because again, fortunately for Blayr, she's naturally a strong athlete and a high power athlete. And so relative to other people I get started with, I would say like her strength numbers were pretty good. But for her, they were low. And so it was like, okay.
You cleaned like 220 the other week or month.
Yeah.
So,
but she was, Blayr, you weren't doing that like when we started. Like she had a hard time pulling the bar from the floor. Yeah.
But as a coach, you can see that potential in somebody.
100%.
Like you can see somebody who cleans 165 and you're like, oh yeah, you can clean 100 kilos. Well, like in like the depth of your soul, if the person can do it or not.
So a great example was her lifetime max. And again, this is looking back, was deadlift was around 315, 320. Now it's like 340. So, shout out to the training program, but yeah, I think we tested and it was like 25, 30 pounds below that, just because it was like, she's like, I couldn't pull the bar from the floor for so long. So there was definitely a lot of like restructuring that had to go into place. And so it was all around that. And then she had a lot of skills that needed to be developed to be competitive in the sport. And so it was like, all right, we're going to put all of our time. We're going to put a lot of time here. You know what I mean? Speaking of boring work, it's like skill progression after skill progression after skill progression. And to her credit,
everybody's favorite burpee skill progression.
Oh my
patented by Coach Chris.
That's right. Burpee skill progressions, handstand walk skill progressions, chest to bar pull-up skill progressions. It's like, this is a girl who came to me and was pissing vinegar. Like she's like, let's friggin' do this thing. And it's like, all right, like we're gonna do this. First step is let's slow down, okay? Because like we don't have these skills yet. So
I mean, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just gonna say it's been fun because it's easier from a coaching perspective to pull an athlete back than it is to push them forward.
Yeah, I didn't have a
really good point.
When we first started working together. I couldn't handstand walk at all.
And you were nervous to get on your hands, let alone walk on them.
I honest to God didn't think that I would ever handstand walk. I like whenever you have those like terrifying thoughts in the back of your head on why you're not going to be successful at something that you want to be successful at, that was mine. I'm like, I am just never going to be able to walk on my hands. Like, I don't know if I have like a genetic defect or like some type, I can't, I'm never going to be able to do it. And I pretty much just made myself believe that I was never going to be able to do it. And so Chris every day made me do these like drills, and I had to video myself. So every day I would set the video camera up and be like, hi, it's me again. I'm not gonna be able to do this, but here we go. And I would go over there and I would like do the drills. And my friend Rena, who works out with me all the time.
Shout out Rena. She is like the support system of all support systems. She's the best.
So I would do it every single day. And then I think the open was like drawing near. It was this wasn't last open. Was it last open?
No. 21, I think.
Okay. Yeah, the open was drawing near. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to tape this dumb line, and I'm gonna have to tape another dumb line at the 5 foot mark, and they're not gonna let me go on, because I think one year they had like deadlifts and handstand walks, and like I could deadlift easily, but I just had to like sit there and stare at the tape line because I could not go to 5 feet. I was trying to like catapult myself to the 5 foot line. And so I did a tape. We did all these drills for like months and months and months. And I was like, okay, it's now or never. Like, I'm going to have to go across this tape line, and I'm getting across this tape line this year. So it was like before noon class started, and everybody was on their foam rollers, just chilling. So like I had like a little bit of a hype crew. The 12 o'clock soccer mom audience was like cheering me on.
Blayr loves to put on a show too.
and I just like started trying to do it. And then out of nowhere, I just walked 5 feet, and then I walked 5 feet again. And then I taped another line, and then I walked 10 feet. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know where this is coming from. It's obviously not from Chris's skill work.
I was just about to say the classic 6 months of progressions that led to out of nowhere the 5 feet of handstand walking.
I don't know what got into me today. Your coach is screaming at the phone.
I'm so glad I ate my Wheaties this morning. I don't know.
But yeah, so I mean, just a testament to like how far we've come. Like I really did not think that I would ever be able to do that. I think a lot of CrossFitters kind of like put in their mind like, oh, I'll never be able to do that. Like, I'll just never be able to do that. My friend Rena is the world's worst at doing it. She was like, I'm never going to be able to get a bar muscle up. I'm never going to be able to get a bar muscle up. And then I would do my skill progressions that Chris had for me, because my gymnastics was very hot garbage when I started with him. And it's gotten a lot better. So I would do my bar muscle up progressions, and she's like, well, I'm not going to do this. This is dumb because I'll never get this. And I'm like, well, maybe you should just do it. And she would do some like banded bar muscle ups, do some progressions. And then fittest experience, the intermediate had to do 5 bar muscle ups at the end of one of the workouts. And she was like, well, I judged her. And she was like, well, I guess I'll just like wait 1 minute, rest. And then I guess I'll just like flail around on this bar like I always do, and just like try to get a bar muscle up and do a bunch of chest to bars. And I'm like, just sit down, think about what you need to do, think about what you've been working on, and then like go do a bar muscle up. So she sat down for a minute, and you could see in her face, she was like, I'm not going to get this bar muscle up. I'm not going to do this. And she did like this huge kip. I've never seen her kip this big before. And she got one. And she was like shocked whenever she got up there. But it just goes to show you, like, there's never something that you can't do if you're willing to put in the work. Like, you may think it's impossible because you've never done it before. But there's never anything you can't do if you put in the work. So that's kind of what Chris has taught me. There's been a lot of things where I'm like, I'm never going to get this. And he's like, okay, well, let's just do these drills. And maybe one day we'll make the impossible possible.
Yeah, it's like it speaks to, and Ben knows this because we talk all the time. It's like it speaks to the mental side of things. I mean, I've had countless conversations with Blayr where it's like, hey, we're just going to get 1% better today. That's it. Like, I know you don't feel good. I know you got this going on. I know you're stressed with school. I know you got, 300 meals you got to make tomorrow. It's like, let's just get 1% better today. And fortunately for me, and Blair's put enough trust in me that like when I can have an open and honest conversation with her and be like, hey, we're just going to get 1% better today. She's like, all right, I could do that. And then you string enough of those days together, and then you're able to do things you weren't able to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about nutrition. So you meal prep, as you were saying, you're in school to become a RD, correct?
I have my X exam, and then I have my RD exam, and I'm done.
Awesome. What has that journey been like?
So whenever I started in the program, I basically knew I have a degree in psychology, and I knew, hey, I need to do something, because just having a degree in psychology is kind of just like a crossroads to pick something else to major in. Like you got to go for your master's, or you have.
I think there's all kinds of jokes about psychology degrees.
Like, get like a psychology degree, and then I realized like I can't deal with people's problems all day. I got enough problems.
So you went into nutrition?
Yeah, right. So then I went to nutrition, and now like have a few clients, and I'm doing the same thing. Like I'm doing, I'm listening to people's feelings just about food. But anyway, yeah. So I took a anatomy class and I took a nutrition class, and I was like, okay, whatever one I like more, I'm gonna go into. And I did not enjoy the anatomy class. Like I like working out, but that's way over my head. So, but I really liked the nutrition class, and it came very naturally to me. So I started down this road. I went to LSU again, and I just had to take basically every chemistry that LSU offered and all their nutrition, which was, I think it was before I met Chris, or maybe like right around the time I was about to graduate. But like that was just awful. I was working out a lot. I still had a pretty free schedule, so I was able to train a lot, but like just the amount of stress and everything from chemistry was awful. But I got through that. I started my internship. I've been in the internship a year, and I'm about to leave the internship. I've done a lot of guinea pig things on myself. I think that's the most dangerous thing. I've like gone keto. I didn't go keto very long. I went keto for like a week. It was awful.
You've gotten to ketosis and you're like, this isn't what it's cracked up to be. I'm out of here.
Especially if you're freaking training, forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it.
Yeah, people say you can do CrossFit when you're on keto. That is not true. Like,
I mean, you can, but probably not well.
you can. You'll just be very slow.
Slow and tired.
Yes. So yeah, before I met Chris, I guess from a nutrition journey perspective of myself, it was 2019, and I was at I wouldn't call it like a competitive gym as far as like everyone there was making it to like semifinals, regionals and stuff like that. But everyone was just either on my level or just better than me enough to like push me to where I was running for my life every day. Like to win, where I literally felt like every day I would come into the gym and I was running for my life, because I was trying to like stay up with them, and I was trying to beat them in workouts. And really I was just on the verge of burnout. Because I was just competing every single day, trying to prove to myself that like I belonged in this environment where I was just getting burnt out and didn't even want to CrossFit anymore. But I started going on a cut, because I was like, well, if I'm leaner, then gymnastics is going to be easier for me. Right. That's like, and I've heard it in podcasts. I've heard it in so many podcasts. I've heard like Ben Bergeron put his athletes on cuts, get super lean. Like there's bigger athletes that like struggle with gymnastics. Right. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this. And like, I know how to do it. So I started slowly like cutting down my macros, started slowly cutting down my carbs. And there were days where I felt like really rough. And I slowly but surely got down to the in-body said 9.5% body fat. Like you could see every vein. I've never been that lean in my life. And my gymnastics was great. And some days I was on a really high level. But other days I just felt like hot garbage. And my strength numbers were stagnant. My strength numbers were not going up. They were just staying the same. So then I got into strongman at 9.5% body fat. Not a good idea.
Sounds like a good way to break yourself.
Yeah. So I started doing strongman. The gym owner at that time was like, hey, you should do strongman. Like you're the perfect build for it. Like you should do that. And he started really pushing me like in the strongman, area. So I worked on that. I did one competition, and I was like, yeah, this is fun and everything, but this isn't CrossFit, and I love CrossFit. So then I did another competition, and that's when it was a single competition. That's when I got my body fat tested. And like my dad looked at me. My dad doesn't know anything about nutrition, but I got my body fat tested, and I told him, and he was like, yeah, you probably should like eat something, because you're looking like really small. So I started trying to like slowly gain weight back. I think I was like sitting at 159 pounds. And I'm 5'8". And then like I forgot what it was, but I was in my new gym. I think I was doing deadlifts, and I was doing deadlifts and just like your normal EMOM. And then like boom, my back went out. Like I was doing 155 pound deadlifts, and my back went out. But I had had a bunch of like tweak injuries before that, just being like that lean and trying to compete and train at that level, being that lean. Like it just wasn't working. And I was trying to gain weight back, but I think like my hormones were already like so messed up that
there's a lag time.
Yeah. So like my hormones were already so messed up that my body was like, hey, something's got to give. So it was just like, just Jenga, basically. Like I just, one day it just went. And when it went, like it was like a, hey, like a come to Jesus moment for me because I'd never been injured. And I guess I just had this thought in my head, like, well, I'm like 20 something years old. Like I'm not going to get injured.
Yeah.
And then I wake up and I can't tie my shoes or put my shoes on. And like my husband's like helping me get out of the bathtub and like help me put my pants on because my back was like that bad.
Yeah.
So I guess like from a nutrition perspective, I've like had the ability to be the guinea pig for myself, but really more to learn like what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I still struggle with like trying to control my weight too much because I still in the back of my head am like worried if I get too heavy, like, yeah, I get stronger because I gain muscle mass really fast. But like, what about my gymnastics? Like in the back of my head, I'm always like, what about my gymnastics? And Chris has had to like talk me off the ledge a few times and been like, hey, you've told me for 3 days that you're really tired and you don't look like you're recovering from workouts. Like, what does your nutrition look like? And I've had to be like, okay.
Yeah, like 9 times out of 10 for Blayr, it's like, well, you know, I've cut my carbs, and it's like, please put them back in. It's like you need to recover, and you know, and we've talked about this, Blayr. So I you know, this isn't new, but she's even said like, as a female, like you kind of battle those things, just by you know, pop culture and what, you know, so on and so forth. And the cool thing about CrossFit, it's kind of bucked the trend with a lot of that stuff. But it you know, I'm sure that that's not unique, right? There's a lot of women out there that kind of, you know, battle those things. But it's like, I tell her all the time, I'm like, you know, you're concerned about this, but your goals are performance related. And you know, where your gymnastics are really bad is when you're injured. Then they can't get worse. And so it's like, you need to just give your body what it needs. And it needs that fuel to recover. And then she's great. She's like, you're right. She adds it back in and she feels better the next day. You know what I mean? So
Chris, we wrestled at the same school. You've cut.
Yeah.
So we've all been in the boat of being low calorie, low everything, right? Low hormones. Like how does that mess with like your mind and also like your body?
I mean, I'll just speak from my personal experience cutting weight. I mean, you're just so grumpy all the time. You know, that was the biggest thing that like my wife, Tiff, we dated in college, she would say is like, my demeanor was different. Like people joke about me now that you I have these gigantic teeth that you can see a smile from a mile away. Right. And it's like it's way easier to be upbeat and high energy when you're fueled properly, right? But when you're cutting down to weight for a tournament so that you can step on the scale at whatever it was, and then, you know, 2 hours later you're 6 pounds heavier because you've actually hydrated and fueled yourself, that can definitely mess with your emotions and mess with your hormones. And you know, there's some parts of it where with wrestling, for a lot of folks, it's like an up and down effect. I was pretty disciplined, so I never got those like 10-pound week, you know, those weeks you got to cut 10 pounds. You know what I mean? But I'm sure you had people on the team who did. I know I did. You know,
I'm joking. I did.
Oh, that was you. You were that guy.
Sometimes.
But even so, it's like, okay, 6 to 8 pounds was not uncommon to have to cut in a week. For Blayr, the difference was like, she was at a body fat percentage that a lot of like female bodybuilders or female bikini competitors would compete on stage at, maybe a little bit above that body fat percentage, but she was living there all the time. And so like your body just gets this humongous beat down, and then it breaks.
Yeah. And like, I'm a nutrition coach, so it's really, and I don't know if y'all are like this, from like a coaching perspective, it's really easy to like tell someone else what they need to do, or be like, hey, you need to do this. Like, you need to not worry about this. Like, this is what your body needs. And then give all the science behind it. But when you're by yourself and you're thinking about, like, you're in your own head, it's different. Like, it's a lot easier to tell someone what they should be doing than to like look in the mirror and be like, okay, like, this is what I need to be doing too.
Yeah, it's
right?
got to be objective with yourself. Yeah.
And that's why, like, the three of us, right? Ben's a coach, I'm a coach, Blayr, you're a coach. We've all either have a coach currently or have had coaches in the past in some capacity. And it's because having a third party to just talk things over with, who knows what's going into the everyday striving towards your goals, is huge. Because you're right, it is hard, even for people who know what's going on, to remove emotions. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. When I was in school, they said every therapist needs a therapist. And I like didn't understand that until I became a nutrition coach. And then I was like, it's 100%. Like, I get it.
Nice work, guys. I think that was pretty good.
I'm trying to think of anything that I didn't cover. I guess I would say people who want to get into tactical games, but don't just want to show up to an event and be like, oh, not know what to expect. They now have an athlete camp where they teach you everything. They show you all the movements. They take you to the range. They show you how to shoot. They show you how to be safe and proficient with your firearms. It's in Texas. I went to the one last year, and a lot of people got a lot out of it that were brand new. And I don't know the dates of it for 2023, but I know they're doing it again. So that would be a good route for people if they're like, hey, I don't want to just show up at this event and not really know what to expect, but I want to learn, how to be a competitor in the sport.
Cool. Thanks for doing this today, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just found the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while and enjoying what you're hearing, I would encourage you to leave a rating or review for the show. It would definitely help us out. And lastly, if you're someone who does take your fitness seriously and cares about your performance deeply, I would encourage you to look into hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.